all of the questions were so leading. It made me really mad.
He respects Arthur.
The guard.
But is also jealous of Arthur.
The guard.
And we're back. Welcome to Folie, Deux. Jessica, are you still here with me?
Barely.
Barely. Oh, man. It's been a little bit.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. We did a couple things since the last.
We moved. We got a dog. We moved. And we moved again.
A little Vinny Botticello.
Vinny Botticello.
And then, new city and everything. So, we watched movies, but we just haven't had time to actually sit down and talk.
No. We've only seen one movie.
Oh, what movie is that?
Oh, my God. I'm embarrassed to say, just because it is unfortunately related to the name of our podcast. Joker, Folie, Deux.
No. Our namesake. We had to watch it. Folie, Deux, which now everyone is saying. We actually have time. We got to find the timestamps in our other videos where we're doing Folie, Deux.
I'll look it up right now.
Yeah. Because I'm watching and seeing other people's reviews, and I'm looking at comments, and people are calling this Folie, Deux. And I'm like, that's us. We should have trademarked that.
We should have.
We go into every video and be like, no, you can't say that. We said that. Go to Folie, Deux. But it also makes me think, do we change our name? Do we still stay Folie, Deux? Because I kind of feel like it's tainted a little bit.
I think Folie, Don't is what we
Folie,
talked about. Yeah.
Oh, God. So we watched Joker, not the Joker, Joker, Folie, Deux.
2020.
2020 is when we first said Folie, Deux.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we called it. We knew for one, we wanted to watch this movie more so ahead of time because we've watched the Joker movie. And I will say, Jessica, was our channel named based off of the first Joker movie?
No, because our channel name is not Joker.
Exactly. Just in case people think that we named our channel Folie, Deux because of this channel. That is false. That's false information. Didn't happen.
Fucking look at the
episodes.
goddamn episodes. Yeah.
Well, like Folie, Deux, like what does Folie, Deux mean?
It means the psychosis of two.
Exactly. So.
Or like the madness
Joker,
of two.
The madness. Like just because Joker is calling their movie this, that doesn't mean they made up the name. The word didn't start there. We did this. So.
Yeah, we've been dumb as a pair for way longer than this goddamn movie.
So. I'm not happy, Jessica. I'm not really happy about what we saw fairly recently.
It was a bummer.
It was, yeah. We went to our local theater.
The Nickelodeon
Classic theater, and saw this movie. And I will say from the beginning of the movie, I went, uh-oh, because I felt like they were already trying to change what happened in the first movie. And I say that because I watched the movie right before, or I should say the movie. I watched the first movie right before we watched this movie. And based off of what I just watched, I went, uh-oh. And this is more in my head. I didn't yell it. I don't think you
We could have. I mean, the theater was almost empty.
It was pretty empty except for some very interesting characters to our left.
Not fun. Yeah, I think... Okay, let's just get into it then.
I think we should just get into it because I think there's a lot to talk about. There'll probably be more than we realize that we want to talk about for this movie.
We love a good rant, and I think we're going to be really satisfied by the end of this conversation.
Yeah, I think you're right. Do you want to go kind of scene by scene? We're going for a speed run here of 110%, I would say. Yeah,
well, I mean, if you haven't listened to any episodes before, spoilers. Spoilers.
That's true.
All day.
Spoilers, do you want to give like just kind of your thought before we get into the spoilers as to our, what we think of the movie overall and whether or not we'd suggest others watch it?
Bummed, burnt out,
Yeah.
I think, for me, and disrespected.
Yeah. Like you personally feel disrespected?
Not that I have a right to, but yes. But no, I think we'll get into it, but like, there's a certain movie, certain franchise that has been sullied because of this.
Christopher Bolin is what it sounds like.
It should be Nistifer.
Nistifer instead of Distifer?
Yeah.
Do you recommend the movie?
No.
Okay.
And honestly, there are some movies that I think you watch just because it's so bad and you're like, oh, okay. And it weirdly does move the story, not in a good way, but it does. It progresses the story. This one, no. I really honestly think if you like the first Joker, which totally fine.
Yeah.
I think that was a decent movie.
Yep.
Do not watch the second one. It ruins it.
Yep.
And it ruins other movies.
Yeah. Yeah, my take is very similar, if not exactly the same. Do not watch this movie. I don't think even this movie holds up on its own as its own movie, unless you were to praise it based off of it maybe even just its visuals. Sure, there are some visuals and there are certain shots that I actually think are really nice.
Yeah.
They also upped the budget, this movie.
Doesn't mean shit.
Yes, it did. At that point, I expect the visuals. I expect those things. I also expect some kind of, like a movie. Sometimes movies have sequels, and those sequels then progress and add on to the original movie. That didn't happen in this movie. We went back in time in this movie. We started from point A in Joker. We ended at point B in Joker. We started Joker Folie Deux at point B. We made it back to point A. And maybe even less than that. I feel like this movie is just a waste of time. It ruined that whole arc from A to B in the first movie. This movie completely went out of its way to confirm things based off of what the first movie tried to imply, but led the audience to, essentially decide whether or not said things happened or didn't. This movie went out of its way to actually say, nope, yep, that actually did happen.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
I not only would say, don't watch this movie, I would also say, if you enjoyed the first movie, do not watch this movie. It's going to ruin it for you.
So you said don't watch this movie, don't watch this movie?
Don't watch this movie. And with that said, I guess we can just go into spoiler because it's hard to kind of walk around without actually saying what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few things that I appreciated. A lot of people are saying this is an uninspired film. I don't think that it's uninspired. Because even going into it, even the first, I guess, scene is a cartoon. It's kind of like a Looney Tunes. Is that it?
I guess so.
Almost. But it's a cartoon. It looks like a vintage cartoon of the Joker.
It is Warner Brothers, right? So is Warner Brothers also Looney Tunes?
Yeah, I think so. But it's like a vintage cartoon-esque style of the Joker basically getting ready for the Murray show.
Yep.
And the cartoon is, I think, titled something like Shadow or My Shadow or something. And it's supposed to insinuate that there was this split personality, and this is a theme throughout the movie, where Joker Shadow is the one who kills Murray, abuses people, all of that stuff, and the real Joker gets left with the mess.
Yep.
And from there we go into Arthur Fleck in Arkham Asylum. So this is a few, let's say maybe months after the events of the first movie, where now he's
I think it's
caught.
2 years.
Okay.
I thought it was 2 years.
Well, it's a few years.
That I enjoyed, I liked the cartoon in the beginning, but that was what I was suggesting was, I don't like, this doesn't make sense to me. The idea of like they're already trying to alter our perception as to, or like change what had happened in the first movie and insinuate that actually this is what was happening, which was there was a split personality.
I think retrospect, I agree with that, but at the time, because I went into the movie really not like kind of going blind, like I didn't even know it was going to be a musical. So for me, I thought that was a pretty cool entrance into the movie. 2020, fuck you.
Yeah, no, again, like I enjoyed the cartoon. It's just what they were implying.
Yeah.
And I'm saying because I just watched the first movie right before. You didn't get the chance to do that, but I watched it right before, and it's already trying to change what had happened in the first movie and implying like, oh, actually this is, again, what they're saying is like,
no, I get what they're
there
saying.
was this split
I'm just saying
thing happening
that
when in the first movie that wasn't a thing.
I think that if I'm remembering back to my perspective then, I was hoping that they would take that and run with it in a different direction and execute it better than they did. And I get the setup for what they actually delivered, and it wasn't good, but I had more hope going into that with like just a cartoon. So like I understand the concept of the split personality that they were delivering, but I wasn't worried or I wasn't concerned just viewing that thinking like, oh, they're totally going to trash everything.
Yeah.
That's not where like I started to worry.
I had my alert up when I saw that.
Bullshit.
I definitely did. So they transition after that into Arkham, and we get a look at what Arthur Fleck, like what his day-to-day life is, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's pretty in line with a lot of the Batman stories of Arkham is just a place for, the criminally insane and violent, and, there's no idea of rehabilitation. There's no concept of rehabilitation there. It's just you're in there.
You're an inmate.
You're an inmate, and you're in there to be abused. So we see Arthur, his relationship to some of the other inmates. We see his relationship to the guards, which very early on you can see, even in subtle ways, that they don't have any care for his well-being at all. And I think after a few scenes, or even like a few shots of him in Arkham, were taken to him and his lawyer.
Well, I mean, like even before that, we see some of the guards, but we see some of the guards. We see like the lead guard that we're going to see throughout the most of the movie, Mad-Eye Moody actor and stuff, who's going to be like one of the main personalities that we see in terms of like any kind of relationship between him and the guards. That's like, I don't know if he's like the lead guard, but he's
Brendan
prevalent.
Gleeson.
Yeah, Brendan Gleeson. You see the relationship that he has with him. And then, you see like, I'm pretty sure they introduce like Ricky in some sort of sense, which is the guy that like looks up to. So
Ricky is a kid, and I shouldn't say kid, but he's early 20s maybe is kind of what he looks like. And he clearly is unstable, but he looks up to Arthur in a way where he kind of hangs on his word. I think the guards play a trick on Ricky early on where they basically just try and humiliate him and Arthur, and it's a weird connection between the two of them that Ricky kind of bonds with him.
And it's like established to, like you said, that Arthur does these things for them in order to get like cigarettes, which we know he loves his smoking.
Yeah, the only way he is able to get a cigarette based on what the guards say is if he tells a joke. Right. So they look at him as like just entertainment, something to kick around,
the court
and like
gesture.
Yeah, to make them laugh on command, right? that's basically he looks very deflated. You know, he's just a defeated man, and he reminds us of the very like first half of the first Joker movie, where society is just kicking him around and he doesn't really have any power in the world. Where this one, it's the same concept. The guards are kicking him around. He doesn't have any power in the prison that he's held.
It's interesting too because one of the notes that listening to some of the interviews that Todd Phillips does, the director, he mentioned Jackie, which is Brendan Gleeson. He mentioned his character, the guard. He respects Arthur,
the guard,
but is also jealous of Arthur.
The guard.
Yep. Okay, I put that down in my notes because I was like,
I absolutely did not get that.
Nope.
Idea for either one of those concepts from the interactions that he has with the guard, Jackie. Yeah, I feel like it was, from what I interpreted, it was more just Arthur's a plaything.
Yeah.
And he's more or less just an object to, like, when you want to press the button and see the lights, that's what you do.
He's a plaything. It's like, I could understand him needing or feeling the need to exert some sort of power over someone who clearly has, like, is very famous or has, like, some kind of influence or something. And, like, him being in some sort of, like, authority, he feels the need to now, like, dominate or control someone who has so much street cred or, like, any kind of authority outside of the prison system and, like, this is his time to be able to, you know, take advantage of something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a very easy portrayal of prison guards, especially prison guards that, like, are in a place like Arkham and are dealing with people like Arthur who are technically, like, quote unquote famous. You know, you look at the Stanford experiment, it's the same thing, where it's just like, it's very easy to get into that control mindset and authority mindset. But moving on. So yeah, Arthur, then we meet his lawyer. He meets with his lawyer, who is very motherly to him. Yep. She's very protective of him. She seems like someone who she seems like she would be a good lawyer for him, like, who's really trying to fight, you know, not just a court-appointed lawyer.
That's how I took it. I was just like, this is a good lawyer. Like, in a real world, world case scenario, especially when you have one where we're going to get down to what the options are as to what happens with Arthur in this world, which would happen in the real life world.
Arthur, who can't afford a good lawyer, who cares? Like, this is kind of
best case scenario.
Yeah, best case scenario for him. Yeah, so he meets with her and they talk about basically the outcome that could happen for his trial. And he has the option of being declared criminally insane and going to a psych ward for the rest of his life, or the death penalty. So she wants to try and get him in with a psychiatrist to basically have them declare that he had a split personality, and that split personality was the one who killed Murray and the one who killed everyone else. Those three guys and his boss too.
Tying back to the cartoon at the beginning, you know, like really trying to set the stage. Yeah.
So working on that split personality of, you know, it was someone else that did it. It was the Joker that did it. Yeah. I had an issue for sure with this scene when Arthur is sitting talking to the psychiatrist that they found for him. It wasn't a court-appointed psychiatrist. It was the one that his lawyer found. Because all of the questions were so leading. It made me really mad. Yep. I am not someone who...
You don't get mad?
No. No, I don't want to claim that, like, I have any concept, like, strong grasp on laws.
We are not lawyers.
We're not lawyers.
training.
I haven't studied shit.
I have a book of how to cross-examine.
The art of cross-examination.
The art of cross-examination. I'm on page 8.
And I think that really encapsulates our grasp of...
Exactly. And I watch a lot of videos.
Oh my God. Anyways, her questions were leading as fuck. As the prosecutor, couldn't you look at those interviews and argue that this should be null and void, or just argue that this is like a flawed psych evaluation because the questions are so leading? It was basically like, Arthur, you blacked out, right? The Joker was the one who killed Murray, right? You know, it's one of those things where like that really bothered me.
It's like coming to a conclusion, citing your sources, but then the sources are like completely
or written by you.
Or just written by basically, and they'd be like, oh well, I looked at your sources and they're bullshit. So no. Yeah,
JessicaNews.com.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really frustrating, and again, it's one of those things where like this made me mad in the theaters, but they could have...
She was livid. She was like throwing popcorn around.
I was spitting up my soda. I was ripping off...
You were spitting on the ground like... Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it's one of those things where like, I think still at this point, it wasn't a no turning back point, right? Yeah, where like you could have played into that throughout the story and like... Again, with the first story, it was a lot of the world was against him, and you could turn this into a scenario where, although they're portraying like people who care about him, his attorney, the psychiatrist, all of that, like they were playing against him too, right? That didn't happen. There was no situation or scene where that was explained in a proper way that was like justified how poorly that interview went.
Yeah.
Basically, the psych evaluation was stupid.
Yes.
And it wasn't used in a constructive way in the story, in the plot. It was just stupid.
Yep. So
that really made me mad in the theaters. But moving on. We see Arthur with the guards again in Arkham. And I think during one part, and maybe this was like as he was going to the evaluation, but he is, I think, held in Ward. So
Ward A or something.
He's held in Ward E.
Okay.
And they're walking through Ward B. So you're led to believe that, this is a less dangerous ward for people at Arkham. Yeah. As he's walking by, him and the guards pass this open door, this room where a bunch of inmates are singing music. It's kind of like a music class. And that's where we first see Harley Quinn, or as she's known in this film, Lee.
They make they're walking by and they both do like this.
They both
it's
have
meant to be almost
they both have
kind
the
of glare.
Crazy look in their eye. And what she does is the same thing that Arthur does in the first movie to his neighbor.
Yep.
Where he's walking by, they make eye contact, and then she calls out to him, and she does the finger guns to her head. And they both kind of chuckle at it. After his evaluation, a little bit later in the story, the guard, Jackie, is able to get Arthur into the B ward music class because Arthur has been a model prisoner. And
so, yeah, I took it, I'm just what? At first I was like, what is his motivation? Why is he doing this? Because clearly, this is a benefit for Arthur, but then you learn eventually it's it's because he wants to sing in this class.
The guard is when we first see the guard too, he's whistling, he's kind of humming.
What's the tune that he hums?
When the Saints come.
Or when the Saints go marching in. That happens the whole movie, and the whole movie I kept feeling oh my God, they're forcing this on us. They want us to. This is the song, just like the last movie, what was the song that would pop up every once in a while? It was like, That's Life.
Yeah,
That's
Life.
And that stuck over
That was a good one.
Yeah, but
I
this
think that
one
was appropriate.
like, this one just felt odd.
This one, and maybe we don't know the context of the song, but it felt really forced. But either way, we are led to believe that, like, Jackie really loves music, the guard really loves music, and that is essentially why he was able to get Arthur into the music class, is for his own benefit. He just wanted to sing, because
he just loves singing.
He loves singing.
It's his thing.
Yeah, so he gets Arthur into the music class, and that's where Arthur first talks to Lee.
He is, you could say, gaga over Lee.
He is gaga over Lee.
You could say that.
He's
or gaga. Depends on how you,
Yeah. And there, I think that's when he learns why Lee's in there. And
why is Lee in there?
Lee's in there because she set fire to her and her parents' apartment. So her mom, according to her mom put her into Arkham.
Yeah.
We also find out that Lee watched Arthur's interview with Murray, and
come on,
Murray. She mentions, there's this like line in the movie where she's like, the whole time I was watching, I was just thinking, somebody needs to shoot this guy in the head. So it's very clear from the bat that she is a super fan of Joker.
Yeah. I was about to say Murray, because I wanted to say Murray again.
No.
Yeah, she's a fan of Joker, or it depends on how you want to say it, the Joker. Whatever, but Joker.
Very much Joker.
Yeah.
So we have this interaction. He's very smitten by her. You can tell she's already, like, she's had her eye on him. It's very much a target for her, right? Where it's not just like, love at first sight. There's something more to this.
Interesting.
So eventually, like, time goes by a little bit, and then Arthur is able to go to a little movie night in Ward B with all the people from his music class, and they're showing some old film. They
do that a lot in this movie. They show like really old things, and in the last movie they showed Charlie Chaplin. Like, the crowd is enjoying it. It's like, it's this weird universe where we're like in the aesthetic is like
1980s, but this nostalgia in the movie is almost like, 1940s?
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah, so 1940s on, but we have a little old-fashioned movie musical that's playing, and this I want to talk about. There were 15 fucking musical numbers in this movie.
Yeah, we didn't mention. Did we mention that?
We mentioned that it was a musical, just like a brief sec. But yeah, and I honestly, I do not know. We've tried to like outline the movie's timeline.
Yeah. And
I could not tell you even half of the songs, the musical numbers happen, because it feels like they come out of nowhere.
Yep.
And there's no point to them.
Yep.
It's just Joker. And again, like, this comes back to the name of the movie, which is like the psychosis of two, the madness of two, whatever you want to call it. But it feels like all of the musical numbers are for sure a fantasy, but it's a fantasy shared by the Joker and Lee.
Right.
So they're both like, it feels like they're both in on it together, whether or not they are physically together in reality. But so the musical numbers start really early on, and I'm sure there's one that I'm missing that happens here.
And I'll say, if it's not fun, then it's like, okay, then we're going like more serious kind of like musical. Don't even really like the music that much. I'm like half and half with this, where I'm there's something maybe, but then I'm left being like, eh.
Right, again, I think this comes back to like, it's not an uninspired movie.
Right.
There's a concept, there's an idea that I think could have worked. The musical numbers could have worked, but they are so saturated in this fucking film that by, I don't know, number 8, I was so sick of hearing them sing. Yeah. And it just felt like they were shoving it down your throat, trying to like justify why they had Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, which I honestly don't think they needed to. I think she was fine as Harley Quinn acting. There just wasn't enough material for her to really develop the character on her own. There wasn't enough. It was all singing.
From an acting perspective, she did fine. She wasn't, I don't think she was bad. I don't think she was like crazy excellent. She was fine. But
there wasn't enough room her singing, for her to be bad or good.
And even her singing, I felt bad because there were a lot of different parts where she's singing and I'm like, she's like really has to tone it down, and she is singing. She's like whisper singing. She is like toning it down. I felt bad because I felt like she wasn't singing the way that she felt comfortable with, but that she was like, because of this movie and like where she's at, she had to sing a certain way.
So what I noted in the film is that she sang that way when she was quote unquote in reality with the Joker, because there would be scenes where they're talking to each other and then they just start singing, but then there would be scenes where they are fully dressed up in front of a stage, you know, costume, makeup, everything like that, and they're also singing. The times where she was really belting it out was in their fantasy. The times where she really held back was in reality. Yeah, so I didn't really mind that. Anyways, so like just to get that out of the way, know that there are 15 musical numbers.
There's 15?
There's 15 that happen throughout this goddamn movie.
How long was this movie?
What, just under 2.5 hours?
Under?
Like 220?
So it was like barely, I should say barely. Like the first Joker movie was under 2 hours, for sure. It's like an hour 49 or something minutes.
This one was 220.
And it felt like 3.
Yeah, it felt like 4.
Yes.
But anyways, back to the quote-unquote plot. So they're in movie night, and Joker and Harley are sitting next to each other, and I might go back and say Lee and Harley and back and forth, so you know what I mean. But they're sitting next to each other. She wants to be closer to him. She suggests that they just leave and try and like escape. He doesn't really want to do that. What she does is, for some reason, all of these inmates have matches and cigarettes on them all the time.
Just allowed to do whatever.
Yeah. So she gets up.
Wait, not just these inmates.
The arsonist,
specific person.
Yes. Has a full pack of matches and cigarettes. She gets up as they're watching the movie. She saunters onto the back where the piano is, and she lights her whole matchbook on fire, throws it in the piano, and starts this crazy fire. So they set the ward on fire, basically, and in the chaos, she and Arthur connect again and have this like very like frivolous, frolicking, almost through the daisies type runaway from the insane fire that's blazing behind them.
Yep. And
I think they're singing the whole time. They run out to the courtyard of Arkham, and there are all these reporters there because they know that Arthur Fleck's trial is coming up, and they've basically been camped out there since the movie started. Joker and Harley run up to the gate and start like kind of climbing. They're not really attempting an escape, I wouldn't argue. It's just like they're just rattling the cage.
Yeah, it's almost like part because they're singing. Aren't they still singing?
They're still singing.
That? So it's like part of this musical kind of like
it's the reality
of the song.
It's the reality musical, right? It's the reality number where they're singing in front of the cameras and they're giving them a show.
It's like when they start climbing, you're like, oh, okay, you're not actually leaving because you're like climbing so fucking slow, and then you can see they're
in front of a group.
They're climbing in front of a group, and then you have like the guards like directly behind them, like running at them.
It
like,
wasn't an escape attempt. It was just them being.
It like wasn't real. Or like.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
But so later on, Arthur is punished. He's kind of thrown into solitary confinement. And somehow Lee gets access to him. She goes down and she sees him. Like, the guards let her into his fucking cell. And she says that they don't have a lot of time. She must have bribed them one way or the other.
Because, well, that's what I was going to ask you. I was like, is it just me? Like, did I miss anything? Like,
no,
why
it just seemed to...
She keeps getting this, like, access to him.
Yeah. It just seemed to happen out of nowhere. It was really weird.
Especially with the additional context that we know of. The additional context may help it a little bit, but as opposed to someone who's like in the system or whatever. But yeah, I was gonna ask you that. I was like, did I miss anything? Did I miss something?
No, you didn't miss anything.
Okay.
It just seemed to happen. But she talks to Arthur. She tells him that she is being released by her mother because they think that he is a bad influence on her. Meanwhile, while she's there, she paints him full of makeup and they have sex.
But it was like really cool sex, right?
It was so awkward. And like the whole time, I was just like, she must feel like she made a mistake.
She had to have known she made a mistake.
Putting all those eggs in that poor basket that doesn't even know what an egg is. He can't find the egg. Okay?
Yeah. It took a little bit.
It took less than a little bit.
So, like, I mentioned this to you that the director also had said that he intentionally made it very...
awkward?
No, not the sex scene itself, but just before it, the whole, like, putting on makeup. Oh. Like, because he wanted it to be obvious that she is she's not interested in Arthur, she's interested in the Joker.
She's infatuated with the Joker, not Arthur.
Right. And he had said, like, that was, what am I trying to say? Like,
subtle.
Yeah, he's like, the not so subtle way of telling the audience this.
And he's right. It wasn't so subtle. It was very much in your face. It's very much in your face the entirety of the film that she's just a fangirl. Like, she only cares about the Joker. There's no interest in Arthur as himself, which this will be something that we'll touch on later because it just makes me so mad. But anyways, they end up having really awkward sex. We later get to he's going to have an interview with someone from, like, a host of a television show or a news show or something.
It's almost like a what's his name? Pierce Morgan, because Pierce Morgan would like go and talk like in a way. Which is funny because the original, like, the actor himself has like a British accent, but then for this he actually had to go and change it to like an American accent.
How ironic.
Right? It's crazy.
His lawyer preps him for the interview and basically begs him to not indulge in anything that has to do with Harley and just like portray the fact that he has a split personality, because that is their defense. That is their whole defense.
They're trying to
Arthur kind of shoots back at her and says that he's in love with Lee and she loves him.
I love her.
I love you. So he gets into the interview and you're going to have to take this over because I kind of blocked it out.
I honestly thought this was like earlier on in the movie when we
haven't gotten very far.
Yeah, when we had to like think back as to like what scene was what. For some reason I thought this scene happened before his actual interview with the
psych.
Yeah. I don't know why. I just like
No.
I maybe this is like where my brain just started like mixing in things together and like I don't what's happening anymore. They have this interview and he very much is being
he's playing to the Joker persona.
Yeah.
He is talking about Harley Quinn because she's in the papers. She's been talking to reporters. The interviewer touches on subjects like the Murray thing, the Murray thing, the murders of the like finance bros, all of that stuff.
Did they give the number here?
No, it was
Oh,
yeah, it was 5. But he basically brings stuff up that the lawyer is very specific of like, we can't bring this up. How dare you? Blah, blah, blah.
And he's like, fuck you.
Yeah. And Joker or Arthur doesn't really give a very empathetic, sympathetic answer to any of these questions.
He looks a little unhinged.
He starts to sing. Yeah. He starts to sing, and we see a free Lee walking the streets, infatuated, mesmerized by his interview. Yeah. That is shown on, a bunch of TV screens.
It's that classic, what's the aesthetic? It's either 80s or 60s or whatever, with like the televisions for sale in a whatever. Like there's a billion of them, and they're showing whatever the current news program is.
She's walking on the streets. Yeah. She's stopped by the interview because there are all these TVs in the window of like an electronics store. And she busts the window and takes one of the TVs because she's just so in love. She has to take him with her. But yeah, doesn't go great for Arthur in terms of like PR, and I'm sure his lawyer was pretty pissed at him.
His great lawyer.
She was really trying. Yeah. She was really trying. But so let's turn over. We're going to go into the trial because the trial, the trial starts. Harvey Dent.
The Harvey Dent. They're already
young baby face Harvey Dent. 20-year-old Harvey Dent. He looks like a little kid. Yeah. He's the lead prosecutor. And you, early on, you see a few Joker supporters in the courtroom. There's a whole crowd outside of the courthouse. And I think the judge says that, this is not going to be a spectacle, blah, blah, blah.
The classic things you got to say when it's clearly a spectacle.
The classic things that you got to say so that the audience knows you're serious when you let all of those things happen.
Yep. This is kangaroo court.
It is a kangaroo court. Yeah. But
this, I will say, just to begin with, all this the court scene here just bothered me so much. We're not lawyers. Page 8. I'm still on page 8 of cross-examination.
The art of cross-examination.
They not doing this right. They doing whatever they want to do in these courtroom scenes, but they're just skipping so many things that could be actually interesting that could happen in a courtroom scene. They're like, nah. And then again, like you said, the judge is like, I will not have, this happen in my court when all of that happens in his court. He does nothing. There's nothing to stop anything.
These court scenes really let you down because you think that's where the climax is going to be. That's
the
where,
meat, the big meat
of the story you think is going to happen there. It really doesn't. There's one, maybe you could argue two, but for me, there was one very memorable scene, and that was kind of about it. But the court hearings start, and all the while, kind of day after day, Joker's being transported from there to Arkham. We slowly see Harley Quinn get physically closer and closer to Joker, physically and metaphorically. He asks
his lawyer to also get her closer to him too. That was a suggestion or something that he specifically asked his lawyer to do.
He asked her, can we get Lee a better seat?
Yeah.
There's a scene where his lawyer talks to him and tries to get him to see reason where because this whole time Lee is whispering in his ear and telling him that his lawyer's doing a terrible job. There's one point where his lawyer is giving an interview with surrounded by a bunch of press, and Lee kind of breaks the circle and insults the lawyer and just bitches her out, saying you're doing a terrible job, you're never gonna get him free, yada yada yada, all this stuff.
The whole thing, the idea too, I kept getting confused because Harley was suggesting that there's an avenue in which he is free, and they're able to build this mountain or make this mountain out of a hill from whatever.
Make a mountain out of a molehill.
And they I was just but I'm pretty sure there's only two options. It's either you're considered.
She's arguing he has the opportunity, the outcome for him to gain freedom.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Right.
That's not the case.
I was just like, am I missing something? Like, what happened? Like, is there like a possibility of him either being, completely sentenced to death, or instead actually free of all charges and out? Like, did that come up out of somewhere? Like, I was confused because she was suggesting but then I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's still either he's going here or there.
You're just trying to find a verdict.
Yeah.
You're like, he's guilty of these murders, but is it because he was like mentally unstable, or did he know what he was doing?
Yeah, like the point is like
insane?
he still did it. This person in this body still did these murders.
Yeah.
What do we do from here?
It's not manslaughter.
Not like, yeah, he did it, but anyways, I was just like, am I missing something?
No, it's just, and maybe you could argue like, well, she's insane too.
Right.
But it's weird. But anyways, Arthur's lawyer comes to him and tells him that Lee is a bad influence. He needs to cut off communication. He argues that they're in love. She's the only one looking out for him. And his lawyer drops a truth bomb where she says, Lee was never institutionalized by her parents. Her parents are both alive. They're rich. Her dad was a doctor, is a doctor. She went to grad school. She got her master's in psychology.
Yeah.
And she's manipulating him. And for a split second, you think like he does actually take this information in.
Right.
So you think that he's going to come to this realization, cut her off. But of course, she goes to see him. He confronts her. And I did think this part was interesting because he asks, like, have you been lying to me? And she goes, yeah, I've been lying to you. But who doesn't lie? And she tells him that she just wanted, like, she put herself in there, in like the psych ward because she wanted to meet him. And he finds this like extremely flattering.
Right.
He's so impressed that she did this, as opposed to a normal person being like, you psycho bitch.
Yeah.
But he's like, it works on him. He's very flattered, all this stuff. And then she also tells him, by the way, I'm pregger. I'm prego my ego.
Got a little baby joker.
It's like
brewing.
Yeah. Like a chuckle.
Maybe. Just a little chuckle.
So, and he again like is very excited by this news. So I think this is an interesting take, and I think people could argue, some people could argue like, oh, this is just like a weird like feminist kind of like they're trying to make her the one in power. I think there was a point where they were doing this right, where like she was the manipulator, right? Where they had set this up where he was a very fragile person. Yeah. Again, did they execute this properly, like to the full extent? No. But I didn't mind the fact that because usually in the classic stories, the Joker is the one who has like full control, is manipulating Harley, all this stuff. I thought it was interesting enough to see her in, the reverse role, but that's kind of the extent. It doesn't go much deeper than that.
Yeah, I didn't really care.
Yeah. It wasn't like a super compelling reversal of like, positions of power. Yeah, so, but while she's there, she also urges Arthur to fire his lawyer. And she says that his lawyer is doing a terrible job and putting him at risk. And, there's just no point to her, to the point where Arthur then fires his lawyer. He pulls a Ted Bundy. Yep. And he represents himself.
Hey, you don't need to be on page 8 of the Art of Cross-Examination to know that's not a good idea.
No, you don't.
Not at all.
No.
Oh.
You don't even need to read the back of the book.
But I did mention, when we talked about it, didn't I say like the idea was still for him to come across as like,
the idea was him to argue like split personality, insanity, not knowing what I'm doing. The Joker is a completely different person. And
he like dressed up as Joker and stuff during it, so.
Right, so he decides to represent himself. The next time we see him in court, and this is after the judge has talked to him and like told him all the risks involved.
I will not have a...
You will not make my court into a circus, he tells the man who has adorned himself in clown makeup. He decides to represent himself.
Yep.
He shows up in full fucking makeup. And again, I take issue with this because you could argue that that is intimidation to the jurors, to the witnesses that are going to speak, because that is how he portrayed himself when he did his crimes. That is the basis of their initial defense, is that the Joker was the madman. The Joker was the violent man. So the fact that the judge allows this, because he's like, well, legally a man can dress himself the way he wants.
The way he sees
bullshit.
Fit. Yeah.
Again, we're not lawyers. We don't know.
Page 8.
Yeah. He comes in, he starts representing himself, and he does this whole weird thing. He does like a Charlie Day thing where he starts, and he does a Gene Belcher thing where he starts talking like he's a old Southern boy.
Yeah.
Mr. Puddles.
Puddles.
Is you really?
Wait, Puddles.
So this was the part.
Yeah.
This was the part in the movie, and from what I've seen, almost everyone agrees where this was like the moment in the movie where everyone felt the emotion.
They acknowledged that this is.
They acknowledged that this performance was amazing.
Yes.
It was like by Gary, well, the character's name is Gary Puddles. He was in the first one. The actor's name is Lee Gill. Amazing.
Yeah, he's great.
He testifies against Arthur, and he recounts his experience, not just like during, but also the aftermath of what he had to deal with because of Arthur's actions in the first movie. So Arthur killed his boss. And
in front of him.
Gary
or coworker.
Yeah. And Gary was in the room, and he goes into saying how this made him, like, he's never felt
so small,
and just it was a really kind of heartbreaking scene, and it was amazing.
His acting was like very similar to the first movie. Like he definitely brought the feelings that he had from the first movie back into the second movie. You could feel it.
Oh, I think even
on the
more
stand.
so.
It was like insane. And you felt so bad for Puddles.
It's one of those moments where you really have this like profound, deep, empathetic reaction to a victim sharing their story.
Yep.
Where it's like, you know, a lot of times you can hear what happens to someone and you can kind of like compartmentalize and think like, oh, that's separate from me. That's what they went through. It's still sad, still horrible. But when there's a recounting of it like this, it was like, it really like shook you. It was really good. And you could tell that like even Arthur was affected by this, whereas there are some other people where they testified it was his neighbor in the first one.
Ooh, which we need to go back.
We're gonna go back because Sophie was his neighbor, and in the first one they did a really good job setting this up. There are a lot of things left to question in the first one, where I think there were certain scenes that were defined as he made this up in his head. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those involved her. But then there are other scenes too where you weren't sure what happened, and you weren't sure what was reality or fantasy. And when we're left, like her last scene in the first movie, we are left with like the audience wondering, did Arthur kill her and her daughter? For me, it leaned more to, I assumed that he killed her. Yep. But a number of the things in the second movie clearly point out that no, he didn't. He's being convicted of 5 murders. She's not one of them, neither is her daughter. She is on the witness stand. We see her alive. So he did not kill her. He did not kill her daughter.
So confirmed now.
So there are like these things where I think that's what I really like in movies, where you're left wondering. There are certain movies, like certain moments in The Prestige and like Inception, where the last scene you're left to wonder, like, did that really happen? Or in Sopranos, like, what happened that last scene? All like, there are a lot of examples. You could go on and on where I think it really benefits the story and it really benefits the audience of wondering what the hell happened.
Yeah.
It kind of leaves a weird legacy for the film. And this one chops it down.
This was
a total mega bummer.
And a total mega fucking bummer. Yeah, and like you said, it added to the first movie, and then all of a sudden now it's like, you know what? Nah, didn't happen.
You're taking away a lot. There are a lot of things in this movie that take away from the first.
Yeah.
And this was one of them.
It's funny because that it takes away from the movie, and throughout the trial scenes, just in general, we don't learn anything. They're all just a reiteration. Movie. Yeah, the movie is just like a reiteration of like what had happened in the first movie. We go,
the
okay.
movie feels very stagnant.
And then not only does it do that, it now only confirms certain things that are supposed to, be more ambiguous.
Things that you didn't need or want confirmation on. So that was a bummer. Through some of the court hearings that are being televised, where we also see the inmates watching the televised court hearings and proceedings, Arthur shits on the guards at Arkham. And they do not like this.
No.
So when he gets back, they really give it to him.
Really give it to him. Or they insinuate that
it's an implication that they end
really
up assaulting him.
Yep.
And there are these scenes where they abuse him. There's the implication of assault, and then they throw him back in his cell like just a rag doll and a shell of himself too. And he has kind of just the remnants of his makeup, which I think is supposed to be the artistic way of saying that he's shed his Joker skin and realizes that all is left is Arthur.
It's just Arthur Fleck. Right.
And that's not enough. But after they throw him in, Ricky, who we mentioned earlier, best bud Ricky, who's kind of been like trailing him when we have our scenes back in Arkham, but he starts like scream singing when the Saints go marching in because he sees that like Arthur's been abused, and it's kind of their "Oh Captain, my Captain" kind of moment. Which there was another moment when Arthur gets back to the jail where everyone kind of riots for a moment and sings that song. But Ricky starts singing that from his cell, and the guards get really pissed. They want him to shut up. Jackie, and this isn't shown, but it's heard, Jackie basically suffocates him, strangles him to death to get him to stop.
He dies. Yeah. I think one of the guards is like,
"You killed him. He's not breathing."
Like, he's not breathing, or he's gone. I think they said he's gone. I was curious how they were gonna do that too, just because, like you said, it's just like a shot of Arthur's face, just listening to it.
Yeah. So yeah, they fucking
just
kill
fucking Ricky.
And I think that's supposed to be a turning point for Arthur, where he comes back, and I can't remember if he's in full. Yeah, I think he is in full makeup.
After that?
Yeah.
No.
He's not? But when he's running through the streets, yeah, he is. He's in full makeup.
Oh, okay, yeah, because he does his closing statements.
Yep. So we'll get to the closing statements. He's back in full makeup. And that kind of moment in Arkham was a turning point for him, where it feels like he has a one-on-one with the jury. He's sitting right in front of them, pulls up a stool, and it's kind of like his last comedy show. He's on the single stool in front of the audience, the jury. The joke is on him because he's not the Joker. He's just Arthur Fleck.
I'm Arthur.
I'm just myself is the theme of this movie, and the conclusion he comes to in front of the jurors. He basically takes responsibility for the deaths, the murders he's committed. He admits to murdering his mother as well. Harley storms out.
Yep.
She's pissed. She's pissed. Because she doesn't like Arthur. Arthur doesn't have...
She wants the Joker, but
Arthur
now the fun's gone.
Big D energy. So she storms out. As he's making his closing statements. Everyone's making their closing statements. A bomb goes off.
I remember it'd be like when they were going through this, because it was right when they were going through the verdicts and they're like guilty, and they're going through all of that. Just an explosion happens, and I just remember being like, oh my Jesus Christ. Just like nothing happens in this movie besides like his daydreaming or whatever. Like there are a couple in the court scene where like he's killing people with like a hammer and stuff. You're like, I guess that's something.
All the fantasy scenes are the kind of outbursts that you have throughout the storyline.
And I don't know if we said this, but it's like the movie's way of giving us Joker in full gear and makeup, just like Harley too. It's like their way of doing it, even though it's just a daydream sequence.
Yeah, all of the musical numbers are just like, that's the deliverance of Joker and Harley Quinn. Yep. That's all you get. It's like, other than that there's nothing. Except for this goddamn bomb.
Except for this bomb, and it comes out, and you're like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, comes out of nowhere. Everyone else is totally fucked up, except for Arthur. He is crawling, like, to the opening that has, like, the wall is now blown out from the courtroom. He's
Not to mention, they already create Two-Face.
Well, so he's crawling to the opening. And we see him pass Harvey Dent, and he's sitting there with half of his face that's all mangled.
God. He's still baby.
He's still
just
baby.
A baby still.
The ages are all messed up. Anyways, he escapes, and he's walking down the rubble. He's among the crowd and the chaos. Someone notices exactly who he is. His makeup is kind of like washed off in a way, and they grab him and throw him in their car and are trying to get him out of the area and like to get him to freedom.
Yeah.
He stops them, jumps out of the car, because you can tell like he now at this point doesn't want to be Joker. He doesn't want to have the fame. He doesn't want
associate
the praise.
himself with this whole
he doesn't want to be part of the movement anymore. So he literally runs away from that notion, from that title. Yep. He runs to his old apartment because we learn throughout the story that Harley has bought his old apartment, and that's where she wants to raise her family, even though he's like, that apartment was a shithole.
Yeah, I hated it.
Yeah, I hated it there. But he runs back to his old apartment to the infamous steps. Yep. And he sees her there, and she has like a haircut now.
Which she lied to him too. It was one of her lies too, where she said that she grew up in the same neighborhood and knows the steps and stuff, when in reality it's not.
When she was lying to him, she had said she walked those steps every day to school and blah, blah, blah. So it's this weird spot that's just theirs, but not theirs at all. Yeah. But they're there.
They're both there.
They're both there. He finds
just sitting there waiting for him
with a new do, and he tells her, I'm out, like I've escaped. We can be free now. Let's get out of Gotham. Let's start our life. And she tells him like, well, I don't love you. I love the Joker.
All we had was a fantasy.
And she rejects him, doesn't want him, and he gets rearrested.
Yeah, the police, like, as soon as their conversation's done, the police are like, whew. They all like, just come right when they're, like, waiting.
Squad cars, that like, pull up.
Hold.
Surprise. So, yeah, they arrest him.
I was just like, when this part was happening, I'm like, what are we doing? What is happening anymore? I was just like, besides, feeling that way throughout the movie, but especially during this where it's like the shot of him going back to Arkham after all this is said and done, you're like, what the fuck?
And it's stupid, like, how could they find him that fast? In that much chaos, all of the, like, it doesn't matter. It's stupid. It's stupid. But he's arrested. He's sent back to Arkham. He now is reverted back to the Arthur Fleck that we basically saw in the first movie at the beginning. Broken down man, doesn't really care about his life, and is just trying to, like, get through the day. He is, like, sitting in, I don't know if it's, like, the
just
mess hall, the cafeteria, the common room.
Yeah.
One of the guards tells him, like, hey, you have a visitor. You have to come down with me. So they're walking down a hallway.
And even before that, they allude to something happening because Jackie walks past him and, like, does like a acknowledgement kind of thing. Like he tips his hat to him. To Arthur while he's kind of sitting there. By all like counts, he shouldn't be like too happy with him, especially with the last couple scenes that we've had. It stuck out a little bit as to like, what's this guy?
Yeah.
What?
Weird. But anyways, they're walking down the hall and there's an inmate that kind of rushes after him.
Who's this inmate?
Well, so we've seen him 2 other times.
Oh, okay.
One time we have a 2.5 shot of his face as the Joker is watching TV.
Yeah.
And then the next shot is a 2.5 of his face watching the TV.
With like a menacing smile in a way where he's like...
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, a little menacing, but also like disappointed now that he knows the Joker isn't the Joker. And that's about it.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Does he have a name?
Not that I know of.
No, it's just young inmate.
Young whackety schmackety.
Whackety schmackety.
So that's throughout the entire 2.5 hours. That's all we've gotten.
Yep.
From this inmate.
Yep.
But he rushes down the hallway after Arthur and tells him, I have a joke. Can I tell you my joke? And Arthur kindly like tells him yes. He's like, yeah, is it quick? Let's do that.
Okay.
So he waits in the hall as this kid tells a joke, and the joke is basically, what does a sociopath or what does a psychopath say to a washed up, pathetic shell of a man?
He's a fucking shit.
Yeah, piece of shit. And Arthur, like,
he goes,
he's trying to be gracious enough to entertain, like, oh, this kid is trying to tell me a joke, and Arthur's twisted humor probably actually thinks it's a joke. I mean, but the kid says,
you get what you fucking deserve.
You get what you fucking deserve, and stabs him right in the stomach a couple times.
Kind of brutal in a way.
Really brutal, yeah. And so our final scene is Arthur sliding down the walls of the hallway in Arkham, bleeding out. And in the background, kind of blurred out, we see this psychopath laughing. Mm-hmm. And then we kind of hear him start giving himself an old Glasgow smile.
Oh, nice. Oh, kind of like like that other Joker.
Kind of like the infamous Heath Ledger.
Oh yeah.
Joker. So I was livid when I saw this.
You went, son of a bitch.
I was so mad because, first of all, like, I think that Heath Ledger's Joker was probably the best performance of that character.
Yes.
And I don't know how you top it.
Yes.
There have been people who have attempted and they've embarrassed themselves.
Oh, yes.
And from what I've read, and I haven't confirmed this, I read this somewhere, but I read that, like, Christopher Nolan he was associated with, like, Warner Brothers for a while, the DC universe and the Warner Brothers. And as the second movie was kind of coming about, I think they must have kind of leaked to him that was how they wanted to end it. And Christopher Nolan had basically protested and saying, like, no, I don't want you to associate this with what you're trying to make. What I created with what you are trying to make.
Right.
Eventually there was a split with Nolan and Warner Brothers, and then they went ahead with this, which, again, that could be complete speculation, sure. Complete lie. That's what I read. I like the narrative of that.
Yeah, I agree with the narrative.
I agree with the narrative. It really felt like, to me, it felt fucking disrespectful.
Yep.
You have this amazing, one of the highest rating films in, like, recent decades, mm-hmm. that is now, like, shat on because of this fucking director who wanted to have a ooh gotcha moment at the end where it was like, oh, this isn't the real Joker. This is just a Joker. Yeah,
it was just like it. So this whole scene was like a couple things together, and all of it was shit.
So that's how it ended. We've taken a long time to go through this. It's really frustrating. A lot of the quotes that I'm seeing from the director are just bullshit. It's just
like what?
Well, like him and Joaquin Phoenix have said that there's a warmth to this scene where Arthur is finally at peace with himself. Where I'm pissed because I'm like, okay, so you have now told one story, the first movie, and now a completely conflicting story of that. The message of that story is just be okay with who you are. Just love you, basically, which I think is bullshit. I think it's just like, honestly, I feel like it's almost a cop-out to the reaction of the first film where people said that movie was inciting violence or encouraging violence or whatever. And this was a way to like step back from that and be like, no. Like it wasn't all about that. He realizes the mistakes he made and the regret, and he's not putting it on someone else. He's taking responsibility.
And he died at peace.
With warmth. But yeah, this movie was a bummer. I think it really insulted other films, including the first film that they made. And we've talked about this before where I really don't care if the first one was canon or not. The fact that Bruce Wayne was a kid, Joker was in his, 40s or 50s. Yeah. I've heard some people say, like, well, that just doesn't add up to the final...
Like, as their main criticism.
Right, as their main criticism, which I think, I like the alternate storytelling of the Joker because I think this did give an interesting perspective. Arthur Fleck was a character that you could empathize with, and I think, like a lot of people have said, that makes for a great villain, is someone that you can sympathize with. Yep. And the first movie, you have this world that just keeps kicking a man that's down. Basically, you see him bend until he breaks.
We understand why he ended up where he ended up, or why he took the actions that he ended up taking.
You may not agree with it.
I understand.
But I understand it.
Right.
Whereas this one, there wasn't a true storyline. The plot never moved forward. It regressed. The musical numbers were complete fillers and didn't add anything except for the spectacle of a musical number. Yep. So really disappointed, really considering changing the name of this podcast.
Yeah, it's funny how much this movie hurt us. Not just the audience, but this podcast.
Not like we had a lot to lose.
No, we didn't have a lot. I mean, we went from 3 viewers to maybe like 1 now.
1.5.
Yeah.
Or half.
A half. I mean, do you even want to do a rating? Do you have a rating in mind for this movie? Because I could probably come up with one off the top of my head.
Honestly, I'm going to give it a general 3. Maybe 3.5. Because the cinematography, I will say the cinematography was still great. I think that's where they put a lot of money in. And
this was a movie.
It was a movie.
So it's not a 1. It's not a 0.
It's like putting on a show. It's like putting on Bluey for your dogs, right? Where it's like they can see the colors. Like it's best for the colors, but they don't give a shit of like the actual story.
Well, I saw someone mention it was kind of like a piece of steak. There was a lot to eat, but it didn't taste good. It wasn't made well, or it was overcooked. Meatloaf?
Pork chop. I'm just talking about food I don't like.
It's just like it's food. I can eat it, but didn't like it. Not gonna eat it again. Didn't ask for it. What I was thinking was actually very similar. I was thinking a 3.4.
Yeah.
For this movie.
And I think so low because it fucked up other movies.
Yep.
Didn't have a storyline. Mm-hmm. There was a point where I really considered walking out because I was so sick of the music.
Yep.
And that's about it.
It felt like a movie that hated where it came from, so it wanted to...
It felt like a movie that hated the success of the first movie.
Yeah. The
younger sibling getting pit. It felt like this was a middle child movie.
Okay.
doesn't really need it.
Not needed at all, really.
You know, you can do... No, I'm not gonna say.
I think ultimately this movie, I think, clearly wasn't needed. Didn't need to be made.
It was a disappointment.
It was made because the first one made $1 billion on a $100 million budget or something like that. So
the profits were insane.
Crazy profit. So, like, clearly there was incentive to make another one. We all know this. Yeah, just...
I think they just didn't... Honestly, I think the first one was a fluke almost.
Yeah.
I don't know if they really...
Well, because he keeps going back, and even back then he was going back on like what people ended up being and saying, where they were like, yeah, this movie's about this, or
yeah.
You know, it leaves it to the, you know, your interpretation, and he keeps like fucking it up, and he keeps going back and being like, oh, I didn't intend for it to be like that. It's like he stumbled across this like very successful movie when he didn't intend for it to happen anyways.
There was an art project I did in high school, and it was a collage, and it was like last minute. I completely procrastinated. I threw some shit together, and then I like covered it in charcoal to make it look weird. My teacher loved it because she was pointing out like how I kept on using like the use of like all these different angles and lines and like this repeated pattern from all of these different things. And in my mind, as she's praising it, I was like, I don't know what the fuck I was doing.
Yeah, I'm a fraud.
Right? So I feel like the first movie was almost that, where like they stumbled upon success, and then they wanted to keep that momentum going, but didn't have the actual like understanding of why that first one was successful.
Yep.
And so the next one was like just this crappy result.
Just shit. All right, Jessica, I think it's time to...
I'm done.
Yeah, I'm done with this. Yeah. We need to watch, like, better shit. Like...
I told Rob after this we were going to watch The Dark Knight because I have to...
Yes.
I feel like it's like I need to wash my mouth out.
Yep.
We're going to do that. Wash my eyes out.
We're going to do that as a palate cleanser. I think it's well needed.
I've sobered up since the whole conversation.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what we talked about or didn't like it, give us a like or a...
No, please don't give us a dislike.
A dislike. No, give us a dislike. If you liked the movie, thumbs up. If you didn't like the movie, thumbs down.
If you didn't like the movie, maybe just keep it to yourself.
Hopefully we can keep this going. I'm sure there's plenty of more movies.
I think we're trying to pick this back up again.
Like, follow, subscribe, make sure that you follow the channel, and we'll be posting more Folie Doo on the way. Right, Jessica?
Folie Doo.
Give me some time.